At least 17 states have pushed for legislation to make it even harder for people of color to vote. The For the People Act and the John Lewis Voting Rights Act would help protect our rights and quell gerrymandering, among other suppression tactics. But getting any such legislation passed is an uphill battle. My next guest knows all too well. She was arrested on Thursday by Capitol Police for protesting at the Senate Office Building in favor of federal voting rights legislation. Joining me now, Chairwoman of the Congressional Black Caucus, Representative Joyce Beatty. Thank you for being with us. Let's dive into why you're here today to speak about what happened this week with Capitol Police. And after marching into the Hart Building to protest that the laws be passed for the voting rights bill, you know, as I watched it, and you know, I've been arrested at civil rights demonstrations at least 24 times, staying sometimes as long as 3 months. I understand the reason is to dramatize and bring focus to the issue. And you did it in a peaceful and nonviolent way, and were joined by other leaders. But explain, as chairman of the caucus, what the implications are for you to be handcuffed for merely saying we want to have bills that will protect our right to vote.
First of all, let me say thank you, Reverend Al, for not only having me, but bringing up this topic. I think there are a lot of implications when you think that we have to go to this extent to be able to get legislation for voting rights. Look how hard and how much work was done from August the 6th, 1965, and even before that, for us to fight that they wouldn't change the voting rights laws and then to restore it. And here we are once again fighting, trying not to let voting rights be filibustered away. So it was important for me to join other female Black leaders and allies to show the American people that we're willing to stand for something. It took us back to when you were arrested and when John Lewis was arrested. Here we are 1 year after his death. I could not be silent. It was important for me to be peaceful, but it was important for me to say to all generations, we were joined by young folks and civil rights leaders who marched 50 years ago, right, to let the American people know they have to stand up, say something, and do something. And the Congressional Black Caucus is going to be out front.
Now, I find it ironic that you were arrested by the Capitol Police for peacefully protesting, while Republicans are continuing to run around and minimize the crimes of those who entered the Capitol on January 6th and committed acts of violence and destruction. I mean, the contrast couldn't be more clear. Well, what are your thoughts about that? You have Republicans trying to defend violence and insurrection, and you very nonviolently, peacefully getting arrested. They have no problems with that.
And it's very interesting, and you're right to compare that. And I think it's just another thing to wake up America and to let Black Americans know this is a prime example of the many discriminatory acts, the disparity of treatment. We were marching very peaceful. And Al, you know this all too well. As many times as you have marched with Martin Luther King, with John Lewis, with Jim Clyburn, each time we were arrested, but it was also peaceful. And yet, when Republicans helped those domestic terrorists, those with the January 6th insurrection, destroying the property, destroying Capitol Hill property, and yet nothing happened. Very interesting. But we will continue to march peacefully. And if it means getting arrested, we will do that. Yep. Because, you know, that's the only way change has come for Black America.
And you've compared this moment in this, to the civil rights movement of the 60s when I was a kid, all the way up to the 90s and 2010 and others when I was going to jail for police brutality and others. You and I have worked on police brutalities. And you cannot get the George Floyd bill or some of the things that you and I right there in your home district of Columbus, Ohio, did a funeral together for an unarmed man. You can't get any of that done if we don't protect our right to vote and vote in legislators that will get it done.
Absolutely. Look what's happening across the United States. We have members of the Texas State House in Washington. We've met with them because we see what state legislative bodies are doing, because they know if they suppress the vote, we know if they draw our lines with redistricting to draw us out, it silenced the progress we've made. And that's why we have to come together and continue this fight. And that's why the Congressional Black Caucus is so important. I listened to Majority Whip Jim Clyburn talk about we can't filibuster away our voting rights. We know, but for the Montgomery March, we wouldn't have had the 1964 civil rights. We wouldn't have had the 1965 voting rights and the 1968 March for Jobs. So here we are repeating history. And this time we're bringing everyone along with us to stand up for justice.
And then that's why these marches and continued fights like the Texas Democrats are so important. That's why Dr. King's son, Martin III, and Andrea King and I are calling this National March on Voter Rights. You've got to keep it out there and the pressure on. Congresswoman Joyce Beatty, thank you for being with us tonight and for your service.